This guy's a presidential historian. He's a lecturer. He's a former KGO talk show host and colleague. He's John Rothman, everybody. Hello, sir. Nice to see you.
How are you? Good to see you.
We're always listening to some procedural thing. We always catch you in the middle of monitoring something. And
Donald Trump speaking to the Black Broadcasting Association, a fascinating interaction. And, well, maybe we'll talk about that too.
Did he say, I love it when he says, "Where are my blacks?" Did he say that?
He hasn't said that yet, but it's a very interesting situation because he's very defensive. He speaks not to answer questions, but to make his points, which is not unusual for a politician. And so it's an interesting hour, and we'll no doubt be hearing reviews of it all day.
Yeah. Exactly. I thought it was interesting to note the offense that Kamala Harris is playing around the immigration issue. In fact, I might have Albert, do I have that? Kamala Harris talking about the fact that, immigration and the economy are seen as the two vulnerable things that Kamala Harris has to defend. And what she's done is something very effective. She has suggested that the Democrats actually crafted a deal. It was a Republican deal, largely, crafted by a right-wing senator. And the reality is Donald Trump sidelined it. He derailed it for political reasons.
We talked about that when it happened, I would remind you, Mark.
No, yeah, exactly. We spoke about it on the show, and of course, the reality is, though, that she's using that to beat back the immigration criticism. Do you have it, Albert, or am I? Yeah, here we go.
The administration worked on the most significant border security bill in decades. Some of the most conservative Republicans in Washington, D.C. supported the bill. Even the Border Patrol endorsed it. It was all set to pass. But at the last minute, Trump directed his allies in the Senate to vote it down. Right.
There you go.
Harris
Thank you for that. I want to ask you, John Rothman, how the Harris campaign is taking the enthusiasm and now rolling it out into substantive discussions, or at least mentions of the sort that we just seen, and how you see this proceeding forward.
Okay, first let me begin by saying that is exactly what Donald Trump did. He instructed his Republican allies in the Senate to defeat the bill because he said it will help them, not us. And that's the reason it lost. So let's be clear. Kamala Harris is exactly correct on that point. How is her campaign proceeding? Her fundraising is phenomenal, precedent setting. Her ability to arouse interest, you can see the grassroots interest that's come about. It's really quite remarkable. And if you take a look at the polls, if you want to believe polls, they are indicating that Kamala Harris is truly competitive and maybe even ahead in some cases of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is on the defensive. That's the reason why he won't commit really to debate, because she is a prosecutor. And those of us who've known her and interviewed her know that she's very tough and tenacious. And I think Donald Trump has something to worry about. So the point is now, I would say the election is fairly even. We don't know yet what the impact will be. There are 8 swing states roughly, which we are going to watch very closely. And as you and I discussed, we will go through all the polls on those states as the campaign evolves. Let me also
in that spirit, Albert, I would want just to play a little bit. You have I believe there's a discussion of polling as of this morning. I would just like to play that for John, if we can rally it. Here's a little run at the numbers here, John, and then we'll talk to you on the other side. Here we go.
Back, and I want to sort of create a timeline here to give you an understanding of just how much the entrance of Kamala Harris into this race, as well as the post-RNC bump for Donald Trump, has changed.
These are among registered
turnout
voters.
We were looking at a potentially much lower turnout this go around in 2024 than 2020. So this is almost certain to vote in the election. You look post-debate 2024, look at that. It was just 55% of registered voters. That was actually the same as it was pre-debate, 55%. It was significantly lower than it was in 2020 during the summer when it was 60%. But look at where we are now. We are now at 62% after the RNC, after Kamala Harris gets into this race. And that is actually a higher number than what we saw during the summer of 2020 when
these
it was
are numbers
60%.
related to people
So at this
who are
particular point,
certain to
as we
vote
look
in
at
the
math
election.
right
He's
now,
saying
if
it
we are
rose
trusting what
12%.
voters are saying,
Stay with us for a
it's
second.
actually possible we'll see higher turnout than what we saw in 2020, which is what you pointed out was record turnout. So quite the shift here. It's not just enthusiasm. It's actually people saying that they're going to go out and almost certainly vote.
If you believe what voters are saying with that guy.
I mean, if we don't, then this is all not going to work.
Well, it's all funny money anyway. Why?
Why is it? Well, throughout this entire cycle, we've been pointing out that there were a ton of voters who dislike both Biden and Donald Trump. So pre-RNC, right? 20% in the New York Times polling, 20% in Ipsos polling. Look at where we are today. Look how dramatically
20% don't like Biden and Trump.
Look at this, New York Times down to 8% who say they dislike Harris and Trump. How about Ipsos? The same pattern, 7%. This is very different now than what we saw prior. It looks a lot more like 2020 when it was just 3% who disliked both major party candidates, and very much unlike what we saw in 2016 when it was 18% in the exit polls, which looked a lot more like what we saw earlier in the year. So the fact is, voters are much more apt to at least like one of the candidates, and I think that's part of the reason why voters are much more likely to turn out, because if you dislike both major party candidates, why actually turn out and vote?
Yeah, he makes a good point there. Okay, so essentially, it's Harris who has changed all that arithmetic, John.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah. So
the enthusiasm for Harris, I mean, I talk to a lot of people and I speak a lot of different places, and I really think I'm got a sense of a pulse. And that is that Harris has engendered enthusiasm that Democrats didn't have. Listen, she's going to be 60 years old if she is elected president. She is vigorous. She is relatively young. And when you put her on a stage with Donald Trump, who will be approaching 80, it's a huge contrast. So my sense is, if the enthusiasm continues, if the money continues to roll in, and let me say one more thing, and that is that people don't vote for, they vote against. And I think the people who are voting against Donald Trump are overwhelming in their numbers.
Interesting. Janet I posted it up there. Janet saying, my daughter just pre-registered to vote in this year's election. She turns 18 7 days before the election. Her friends that are just turning 18 are also going to vote. So you have a reinvigorated young voter base, perhaps.
Yes, and that's what Donald Trump is worried about, among other things.
Now, people are saying 60 is relatively young, despite what it is true. John is right about that. So, John, this was being talked about sort of as a fever dream, as a sugar high, as a temporary thing, this jolt of enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. You see it how in terms of it? I mean, obviously, as you suggested so beautifully, she's put together the tremendous fundraise. I mean, record-breaking fundraise. And
$200 million.
Yeah. And then these kinds of enthusiasm polls do suggest that there might be some staying power here.
I think there will be, but you have to understand, campaigns are fought on mistakes. When you make a mistake in a campaign, it's exaggerated. I listened to Donald Trump for the first 20 minutes of the broadcast this morning. He's not effective. His base will love him, but he's not branching out. And to win, you have to branch out. And let me just point out, J.D. Vance has not been a great asset to the ticket. You haven't seen the huge bump that generally happens after a convention. So this is going to be interesting. And who Kamala Harris chooses as vice president also will be interesting to see. And now the governor of Minnesota is in the running as well. Very folksy, very knowledgeable, solid guy, served in Congress. Kamala Harris has a challenge. She has to present herself to the American people. One last point, and then I know I've got more questions. Both camps are trying to define each other, and that is going to be critical. I listened to CNN and Fox on Sunday. If I believe what I heard on Fox about Kamala Harris, she's the worst thing that ever happened to the United States. If I believe what I heard on CNN, she's balanced, she's approachable, she's solid. It was such a contrast. And so the information which is spinning will depend on who you listen to. Who was the last person you talked to? And that, I think, is going to be critical. Let me just point out that both Trump and Harris are buying ads in all the swing states. Mark, if we were still on a commercial radio station, are those stations in those swing states would have paid our salaries and some.
It's interesting because John just made a point, and I'll just make this as an aside. What is keeping legacy media in business, these right-wing radio stations with these, blowhards like Sean Hannity, and I don't know, you can tell me who the latest ones
Mark
are.
Levin, Laura
Mark
Ingraham.
Thank you. What's keeping them in business is the election period, because they carpet bomb the area with election ads, and those election ads cost, and it's wall to wall, as I say. So John is right. Now that legacy media is losing a lot of legacy advertisers like movie companies and car companies, you end up with this being the lifeline, essentially. But yeah, they are, from what I'm told, the Trump campaign, I thought I read this maybe yesterday, Trump campaign is spending 4 times what the Harris campaign is spending in TV ads in those swing states right now, attacking Kamala Harris. I don't know how effective that stuff is, but I know that political consultants get paid based on those media buys. So I think they tend to still buy on legacy media. I feel
we're
like
in the
digital
wrong
media
business,
is
Mark. We're in the wrong business. But you understand, it is defining the candidates early. If you can define a candidate negatively or positively before October 1st, you've gone a long way. And remember, we have something else in this country, early voting. It's not like we used to do where every November 8th, we all went to the polls. It doesn't work that way anymore. There will be voting in this country beginning in September, the end of September. And so hitting these swing states, hitting them hard with these ads is going to be critical. One other element that I think is important is mistakes. And I've said that before, but I want to just reiterate it. We judge candidates in large measure, not on the positive things they say, but on the mistakes that they make. And so those mistakes will be certainly emphasized, and I would point out exaggerated, depending upon whether you're watching Fox, CNN, or MSNBC.
In that spirit,
or listening to the Mark Thompson program. Naturally.
There you go. Thank you for throwing that in. The general sense is that VP doesn't really help the ticket. It might help get you a state. It might help balance the ticket a bit, but people vote typically for top of ticket is the conventional thinking. And
that's what Donald Trump, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want you to know that's what Donald Trump said this morning. He was asked about J.D. Vance. He said, you're not voting for J.D. Vance. You're voting for Donald Trump. You're voting for me. And that is the emphasis he's going to make. I would suggest that the contrast will be Kamala Harris. I'd bet everything on saying that she is going to talk about the asset of the number 2 on the ticket, which is why she's going to somebody with vast experience. Remember, J.D. Vance has only served in the Senate less than 2 years. It's a huge gap. And frankly, I use the expression experience counts. And I think that's what the Democrats are going to push very, very hard.
Well, J.D. Vance is a person who was gifted the seat that he has in the Senate by Peter Thiel, who gifted him a spot running one of Thiel's companies, then gifted him another spot with one of Thiel's companies.
Nobody knows who Peter Thiel is, but you will explain it. You can Google him. You can read about him. You can understand his Republican roots and also his roots in deep-seated MAGA movement.
Right. I mean,
Google it.
You have the reality of a tech oligarch who is part of the PayPal bro world, who is able to literally put 2 people in the Senate based on his it ended up only being 1, but he gave each, in this case we're talking about J.D. Vance, $15 million, and that that essentially buys you a seat in the Senate. But more to the point, he's the one who put pressure on Donald Trump to pick J.D. Vance, along with a point I've made before, little Donald Jr. and Eric both had daddy's ear also on this, and that's how we end up with J.D. Vance. And so the question comes, you've mentioned the negatives. Aren't they playing catch-up the more they have to back and fill about remarks made by J.D. Vance?
Yes, if anybody pays attention to a vice presidential nominee. And that's the real question. I don't know an election except 1960 where who was nominated for vice president mattered. And the reason it mattered in 1960 was because Lyndon Johnson was able to swing Texas to Kennedy. And that's what really put Kennedy over the top, that and Dick Daley in Chicago.
Did the Tom
Illinois.
Eagleton spin out, then Sergeant Shriver, did that affect things, or was it such a landslide that you couldn't really point to
George
that?
McGovern was losing already, but the minute he said that he backed Tom Eagleton 1,000%, then dumped him and took Sergeant Shriver, who, aside from us, remembers that Sergeant Shriver was the substitute nominee.
Yeah.
But remember, the minute McGovern did that, the election was over. Because how do you judge a candidate for president on decisions, who they choose for vice president?
So where do we end up here, John? Do we end up with no debate? Does Trump actually cave and debate Kamala Harris? He seems...
I can't tell you. I can't tell you the answer. I can tell you that in every election since Jerry Ford and Jimmy Carter in 1976, there has been a head-to-head, not debate, but joint appearance. And it's interesting. I went back and I looked at the 1960 count, and the Congress issued transcripts, and they called them the joint appearances, not the debates, because these are not debates. You and I know what a debate is. These are joint appearances. And I don't know that Donald Trump can resist doing it, but if I were Donald Trump, I'd be worried. Kamala Harris is a prosecutor. She's not going to have any compunction about explaining exactly the problems that she has with Donald Trump. And she'll do it with clarity. I've watched her in a courtroom, and I've watched her on television. I've interviewed her on the radio. I can tell you she's very, very tough on that. And if I were Donald Trump, I would be concerned. But understand, and you already know it because you've repeated it, the people who are voting for Donald Trump are going to vote for Donald Trump no matter what. When he said he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and his supporters would still support him, he's absolutely right. And the people who don't like Trump, who are supporters of Kamala Harris and, yes, Joe Biden, are going to vote against him no matter what. What's going to matter are a few key swing voters.
Right.
They are the ones who will influence this election. I don't believe it'll be a landslide. But for Donald Trump, making a serious mistake would be an earthquake. And if he can paint Kamala Harris in the negative terms that he's trying to do now, and by the way, I think he's making a mistake because he's ridiculing her, and I think that's a mistake. I think Kamala Harris is clearly got an advantage at this moment. And I want to emphasize that. Somebody asked me who's going to win the election. I don't want to predict who's going to win. I can tell you what I can see today. And all you have to do is take a look at the polls and see the enthusiasm for Kamala Harris, and frankly, the enthusiasm against Donald Trump is rising.
Well, there is a big negative. I think John is so right about that toward Trump, and there are big positives associated with Kamala Harris. And no candidate is perfect. I don't mean to be an apologist for Kamala Harris, but I think she does a good job when she talks about the border and the border bill that essentially was derailed by Donald Trump. I want to quickly, in my last minute with you, ask you about what's going on in the Middle East. As Hezbollah gets involved in what is an already volatile situation and Israel hits back, I wonder if you can summarize sort of the events of the last week and where we are.
The Israelis are making clear with Hezbollah an attack in Beirut, a successful attack, but more significant.
But go back, John. Why did they attack?
Because they are hitting Hezbollah's operatives. They are hitting the people who have engineered much of the turbulence in the Middle East. And the most
but
important
because
thing
I thought, maybe I'm wrong about this. I mean, you really follow this region more closely, but I thought that Israel was attacked by southern Lebanon, Hezbollah, and then
it has been.
But a bomb
residents
had reached Tel Aviv. Is that correct or not?
That's correct. 80,000 residents of southern Lebanon, Jews, Israelis, and Druze have fled because of the fear. And you're absolutely right. Nobody talks about the 80,000 people who have been displaced. And that's a very important point.
But I'm just trying to distinguish. I mean, in the tit-for-tat world of the Middle East, I'm trying to, kind of get what the tit-for-tat is here. Hezbollah
to knock out Hezbollah leadership.
They fired a bomb toward Tel Aviv. They fired a missile toward Tel Aviv. It landed. It killed people. And so the Israelis struck back. And now this is where we pick up the story as you picked it up. Right. So you've got senior
to what happened yesterday, the assassination of Hania. And this is very, very important. This was a key man in Hamas. And the Israelis took him out in Tehran. in Iran, where he was visiting for the inauguration of the new president. The Israelis are making clear, and Benjamin Netanyahu in a press conference this morning, whatever you think of Benjamin Netanyahu, like him, don't like him, that's not the issue. He said, we are going to hit these people and we are going to succeed. And whatever you say about Netanyahu, he's right. The Israeli efficiency at getting rid of enemies is real. Now, here's the question for you. Will getting rid of the enemies solve the problem? And the answer is no. The simple fact is that the hatred that exists against Israel, the determination to destroy Israel, is so real. There is another caveat that I have to raise. I believe that Iran now has a nuclear capability. I believe that capability is recognized by everyone involved. And that's why everyone is being very careful. Not only are the Israelis impacted by that, but Saudi Arabia is impacted by that. And that means we are directly involved in that as well. So how this escalates, and it will escalate. I spoke with friends in Israel this morning, and I spoke with my son, who is in Tel Aviv at this very moment, and he said to me, we know that something's coming, and they are right. How will this affect American support for Israel? Let me just indicate to you that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have both made statements affirming American support for Israel and the right of Israel to defend itself. What that means is that the issue of the Middle East should not be a partisan issue in American politics in 2024. But this is going to be a dicey situation. We're going to have to watch it carefully. And believe me, I'm going to. You know, I'm away for a month. I'm not going to be with you. This is my last week with you.
Well, I didn't
What?
I didn't approve this, but I will.
Are you going to deduct from my salary?
I will. I was just about to give you a big bump too. Wes asks again back to domestic politics, and we're now way over time with John. So I'll just ask him quickly: do you think Trump is also worried that if he loses, he will end up in jail?
It's a very interesting question. I don't know if he'll end up in jail. For Donald Trump, losing the election would be a greater punishment than any other legal remedy. I cannot let you go without talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have to do it because Kamala Harris is being attacked, basically saying if she weren't a black Asian woman, she wouldn't have gone anywhere. Let me tell you, that's absolute rubbish, and I think it's falling flat. And I think Donald Trump will suffer. But no, I look, Donald Trump wants to succeed. This is his vindication. If he is president, he will make sure all the legal cases are dropped. If he is not president, I think these cases, particularly January 6th, will be pursued. And I think Donald Trump understands the implications of that.
John, have a great trip. I don't want to ask where you're going. It's none of my business. So where are you going?
We are going to go to Amsterdam, where I will spend a week with my wife and my older son. And then we're going on a cruise. And then I will be back. And I have to tell you, it's killing me to be away during these times. So I want to thank you, Mark, for agreeing that no political news will be generated during my absence. And I will be back with you in the first week of September. And thank you very much, Mark. It's always a pleasure.
Well, John, we love you. And if something happens and you want to jump on you can join us via cell phone. I joined from a cruise ship one night when something big happened with David Katz and David K. Johnston. We were all on together. And it does, with the Starlink and whatever is on the cruise ship, you can actually do it. So I don't know if you're on a cruise ship or where you are, what kind of cruise, but my point is simply that if the moment comes and you want to break the glass and pull the handle and come on, we'd love to have you. So
I know who to call. And
exactly.
Thank you very much. And Kim, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Oh, that's sweet. Good words from John Rothman. John Rothman, everybody.